It's Wednesday, April 30th, and this is Student Affairs Live. I'm your host, Chris Butler, and today we're going to discuss transfer student success. Student Affairs Live is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, a series of professional development web shows and podcasts, which are always available free on our archives at higheredlive.com and on iTunes. Be part of today's broadcast by tuning in and asking your questions using the hashtag HigherEdLive on Twitter. Today's show would not be possible without the support of Georgia Southern University and M. Stoner. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communication firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Sign up for a free webinar on Friday, May 2nd to learn about Buzzer, a higher ed content management system. Buzzer is specifically built for small colleges and universities that desire top-notch website strategy and well-organized content with an attractive design. We're going to send out a link in just a moment so you can learn more and get yourself registered. Today we're going to talk about transfer students and how student affairs can play a role in their success. We've got two great guests that are going to join us. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a moment. I think it's a timely topic, though, as many of our campuses have new articulation agreements with community colleges, junior colleges, and two-year schools. It's also a personal interest of mine as I transferred from a small liberal arts school to a large state university, and I think our guest Nicole is also a fellow transfer student who will tell us more about that as she introduces herself. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Nicole.
Hello, I'm Nicole McKendrick. I'm the transfer specialist and admissions counselor here in the Office of Admissions at IU Southeast. I work one-on-one with our transfer students here on campus as well as at a couple of the area community colleges. And I also work with our Transfer Student Honor Society. And as Chris said, I am also a transfer student myself. So I transferred from a large four-year institution into IU Southeast.
And hello, I am Jason Merriweather. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs here at IU Southeast. I have the opportunity to work with Nicole every day, so that's one of my highlights. She's amazing. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation because at our campus, over 30% of our population are transfer students. And so because of that, there's a lot of intentionality that goes with that type of impact on your student population. And so it's a part of what we live and breathe every day. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining us today and taking the time out to share some of your expertise. I'm going to take us, a step backwards now and ask a question that may sound obvious, but just doing some research for today. Well, how do you define what a transfer student is? Like myself, I transferred with an associate's degree into a four-year institution. Would I have counted as a transfer student, or would I have just been a student who was seeking a four-year degree then?
I think every institution has their own parameters that determine whether or not a student is a transfer student or not. I would say in more broad, non-specific terms that I would say any student that has previously taken academic coursework at another college and is entering a different institution would be considered a transfer student.
Okay. And as Jason alluded to, he said about 30% of your students there are transfer students. Can you give us an idea of how the size of your transfer population impacts your approach toward dealing with transfer students?
I think that we have to be very intentional. And when this is on our campus, I think we're required to say every day when we think about what impacts our decisions, when we think about our services, when we think about what we offer, we have to really be intentional that transfer students are considered and they're a priority. It's really easy for professionals to say, oh, well, this is what we want to do, this is what we think is important, and so in doing that, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to say, how is the student feeling about this? When a student has experienced another campus, is it seamless for them? And so we really have to think about them strategically in everything that we do.
I completely agree with you there. As someone at an institution now, and we were discussing this before we came live, that I'm not sure in student affairs that we're doing that right now, that we view our students as students here. We don't necessarily think about their background. Were they on another campus? How do things compare there? So let's talk about that a little bit now. You know, as we talk about these new articulation and transfer agreements, what kind of opportunities do you think these create for student affairs as we move forward?
I mean, I think with the focus coming more on students and their finances, that's become a big deal, and students are beginning to recognize that more and more, and we're seeing them go to community colleges and come to four-year institutions as those transfer students. It's just become increasingly important for us to focus on different articulations, equivalencies, and also encouraging that early education. A lot of students think about transfer initially just before they're ready to transfer, and something that I always encourage is thinking about transfer that first semester you're on a campus. So, I mean, I really feel like that, you know, getting those students in, working with those students early is what is going to get the students to our institution and make them more likely to attend here.
I think the other element of that, going back to affordability, is making sure that we are thinking about when the student comes from another school, our financial aid officers are prepared to receive them and prepared to say, okay, we understand what you've done. We understand your academic progress. We understand how much of your financial aid awards have gone toward completion. And so maybe in coming here, you may only have this much of your aid money left. So maybe instead of planning your life toward getting refund checks fall and spring, maybe we need to help you plan your experience to hold a little back and say, make summer school a part of your experience, and also look at completion. And the other thing about transfer students for our campus is that many of our transfer students are also adults. So we also have to factor in their work experience, if they have family commitments. And so even with transfer students as a population, we can't put them in one box, even for the large percentage that we have on our campus.
That's a good point of discussing some of the maybe non-traditional status of transfer students. Do you think that that creates any special challenges on your campus? I know you discussed a little bit of the financial aid, but as far as other student affairs departments, do you see them impacting your campus and your division?
Well, it's interesting. In preparing for this, I did a little anecdotal homework. Obviously, Nicole and I have all the data and the numbers in front of us to try to prepare for the conversation. But we just talked with some transfer students, and I asked a few of them, tell me about your integration to the campus. Tell me how you got involved. There's one of our transfer students, her name is Stephanie Collins, and she's a senior. She's graduating. And so she said that when she came here, one of the things that she was missing was opportunities to get involved. She said even though she saw tables at orientation, even though she saw the opportunities, she really felt like those were only for 18-year-old traditional students. And so with her having experience, she said that what actually got her involved were the one-on-one relationships, people saying hello to her, people inviting her out to make her understand that it was important to her, for her to get involved too. And so as campus life goes, part of our marketing for services is sometimes just saying, hey, transfer students, when we list people that we want to come, we have a lot of transfer students who hang out in our adult center, so making sure that we're intentional to market there. And just as we're communicating with people, it's being cognizant of that group and saying, hey, we want you to participate too, and we want you to know that we know you're here and you have a place.
Oh, that's great. Nicole, can I add something to that?
Sure. I was going to agree with that. I feel like the engagement piece for transfer students is incredibly important to make sure they are integrated into the campus, and that's why we're working with Tau Sigma Honorary Society to kind of get that process moving on our campus and hopefully developing mentoring programs and other opportunities for those transfer students to get involved here.
So I think we touched a little bit on that in that last answer, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. Maybe you can give us more information about that. But what are some of the differences that you see in your positions, the differences between transfer students and traditional students, especially, and we keep kind of talking about this, but how they interact with student affairs? I know, Jason, you mentioned that some of them are adult students, and so are you creating programs and services specifically for maybe perhaps slightly older student on your campus versus the ones that may have come right out of high school or traditional type?
Well, we're really fortunate here. We have an adult student center on our campus. It's in the student center. We have outstanding director. Have to give her a shout out. Her name is Kim Pell. She's an outstanding director of the adult center. She has a small staff and a couple of grad assistants who help her out over there. It's open for student access 24 hours a day. It's staffed a great portion of the day. And so there you have options for academic support. You have tons of information about community involvement as well as campus involvement. Career Services partners with them to provide resources for internship and employment information. So that's kind of the real model for a one-stop shop where any adult student can go and find something for them because there's so much information there. The other cool thing about having an adult center for our campus is that you find that non-traditional students or adults or transfers all sort of wander into there, and then once they sort of wander in, they end up coming back because, you know, the people are friendly and they know that, hey, this exists for me. But it doesn't stop there. We also use the adult center as a conduit to get students out and about and involved in other parts of the campus community. One other student affairs shop I'd like to throw out, we also have a mentoring center. And so for some of our transfer students, the mentoring center is really designed for those the students who are coming in here. They may be 18 years old, the traditional idea. So what we do for a lot of transfers is say, hey, you're here. If you're not interested in being mentored and you don't need a mentor, why don't you take on a mentee? Get involved that way. You can learn a little bit about our campus, but you can also talk about your college experiences to help someone else transition in. So we just try to make sure, again, I hate to keep going back to intentionality, but I have to. It's to make sure that all of our services sort of adapt to them.
I think that's a fantastic point and something that I never even thought about, but some of the great experiences and resources that some of these adult students would bring that could really benefit your traditional undergraduate students. And I think that's a wonderful example of how you can integrate the two of those.
Thank you.
Nicole, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Jason covered it.
All right. I just want to remind everybody at home, if you have questions, you can tweet them now at HigherEdLive using the hashtag on Twitter. And so, again, we're talking about the Adult Center and some of the ways to get non-traditional and transfer students involved on campus. How do you see their interests differing from traditional students? And, you know, am I making a generalization there? Are they that much different? Or are they specific to their needs?
Transfer students, I mean, if I had to choose one word to identify them, it would be unique because they all come with their own specific background, whether it's academic or personal. So, I mean, there's definitely a large amount of differences there that you will see between them and those first-year students on our campus. And I think depending on those differences is kind of how you see them begin to integrate themselves into the university. Some students have a very like, oh, I've been here, done that before type of approach, which always worries me because I want to make sure that they know what we have to offer and, you know, that there's so many more opportunities than just what is at the surface. But then you have other students that have that been there, done that approach, but that comes with, you know, their ability to understand that they need to ask questions, that they need to get involved, and that they need to be a part of the campus here.
Yeah, and what's cool is that in bringing the students onto campus, we have core values here, and one of our core values is really about sort of having a nurturing environment. And not nurturing in the sense of coddling and hand-holding, but more nurturing in the sense of understanding who the individual is. And Nicole, who's really sort of the conduit for so many students to come into our campus in terms of being transfers, what you'll find is that there are conversations that she has where she can refer. In terms of our advisement models, all of our advisors in the different academic schools, each of them have trainings and different things that they go through to prepare them to connect with transfer students based on what they bring. A transfer student who comes in with a couple of semesters versus a transfer who may come in their senior year, they each bring really different elements of experience. And so if you don't take the time to sort of engage that nurturing core value to listen to them and understand who they are and how they want to shape their experience, then we'll be the next school that's on the transcript that they use when they go to the next place. And so part of our world is saying, once you're here, we want to meet your goals. Some of our students transfer here without the goal to get a degree. Some of them are working, they may have some credit, and maybe taking a couple of courses will get them a promotion or a pay raise at their job. And so in that case, we then have to adjust to that to say, hey, okay, if this is who you are, this is what your goals are, this is how our campus can sort of shape your experience. Others come here and say, I want to come here, I want to do this for a couple of years, and then I want to transfer out maybe to another school. And so we have to help shape their experience as well.
I love that approach and that attitude to it. And that's something I would say, just to bring my own personal perspective back into it a little bit, is that we see our students when they transfer in, and like you said, they are a little bit older, and like Nicole said, they've kind of been there, done that. And as someone whose role is promote engagement and being involved as a student body here, but they're really focused on that career move, and like Jason said, what can they take to that next job or that next step up their ladder. So, and I know you mentioned tailoring some of the services, but how do you really do that? Can you meet with each student individually? I know you said you had some staff there, Nicole, you're specifically devoted to transfer students, but how do you really handle that? You can pass that off to ensure they get that kind of attention and understanding.
It's definitely difficult. Like Jason said, we have 30% of our population here are transfer students, so I alone can't meet with all of them. But we definitely take every opportunity we can to meet and talk with those students. I frequently visit many of the area community college campuses, and I'll speak with first-year orientation classes or whatever people ask me and invite me to participate in. I'm always happy to do that, just to get that message out there about the importance of doing your homework and being well educated about the transfer process. Another thing I really used with our transfer students is referring them to our Career Development Center. A lot of times that is a huge component, and we have an excellent center here, but that can be a huge component in a transfer student's experience. Sometimes I'll see a student that transfers over with 2 years worth of credit, and they still don't know what they want to do. That is going to be my first resource. So using those different resources we have here on campus, and trying to delegate some of the tasks to other people, and everyone here on our campus is amazing, so they do a great job helping out.
Yeah, I think that one of the cool things is that part of the work that we do in terms of shaping the student experience is making sure that every office on campus has some clarity about their role in working with transfer students. What's really important is to not allow ourselves to get comfortable and to say that, we have these students on campus, so other people aren't thinking about them and other people aren't connecting with them. So it's really, really important that our work is centered around everyone having a role in supporting our transfer students. And by doing that, that's what really helps us out to sort of be as effective as we can be, is that we're really clear in our strategy about everyone having a place and knowing who the students are and how each of our roles is designed to impact them. One of the things that's really cool is in terms of the way that we do enrollment management and the way different areas are broken up to look at who our students are. For example, one of our strategies is we reach out to students who are in the area who may have some college credit. Well, we started out by working with students who had credit solely from our campus, and then we're now reaching out to other students. So when some of those people get here, we then have to say, okay, they're coming, so that required us to talk to the advisors to say they're coming. How will this shape your work with them? To talk to the admissions team. These students are coming here. How will this shape your work with them? To prepare financial aid. And so it's really laying that front-end strategy so students don't come on campus and feel like they don't have a place. On our website, we actually, added some specific links. If you're a transfer student, click here. And these are some resources and places where you can look to retool your experience. And so as we do that, it really is having a ground-up approach to connecting with all the different students.
I love that it came from the top and it's trickled down. As someone who's a marketing
say I'm in the
professional,
top. I'll try to. I'm in the middle. I never like to say I'm at the top. I'm in the middle.
yeah, it's lonely at the top, so I understand that. I was saying, as a communications professional, I've got to ask this, but do you alter your communication strategy? I know you mentioned your website, but do you change anything you do as far as your communication and your marketing when you're trying to reach a transfer student versus a traditional student?
Absolutely. There are several different ways that we communicate with students here from the Office of Admissions. Certain mailings we send out, letting students know, hey, it's, this time of the year, you should be getting this information in. Everything's always a little different with transfer students, so you have to kind of embrace that and roll with the punches.
Yeah, and I think as we communicate with people, we have to say, okay, if we're marketing to this information, well, let's say when you apply here and you have on certain applications, obviously on your admission application, you can identify yourself as a transfer student. Well, this is very similar to some of the, if you're looking at multiracial students, if you're looking at students from different countries who are international and things like that, you want them to have a place, even in your paperwork, that says we're thinking about who you are. And so just allowing a transfer student the opportunity to identify themselves in that sort of paper and communication process is important. But then on the backside of it, there's a point where we want them to no longer identify as a transfer and to be a grenadier, our cool mascot. We want them to be a grenadier, and so it's kind of guiding that process.
That's awesome. So as we begin to kind of wind down a little bit, can you share what trends you're seeing concerning transfer students now on your campus and maybe even nationally from some of your research or perhaps some of your conferences you've been to?
Certainly. As I said before, students are paying very close attention to that financial investment that they're making in their education. So that's one thing I frequently, when I meet with a transfer student, that I will hear from them that, this is why they're making this decision. So that's something I see quite frequently.
Yeah, and the other thing, if you look at what's going on at conferences, I will say that in some of the conferences I've attended lately, I've seen more and more discussion about transfer students as a specific student type. If we look at what we're going to present for maybe NASPA or ACPA next year, that means I'm going to have to pay for a registration if I'm asking her to go, but I'm definitely going to be asking Nicole to work with me to present on some of her best practices. We hadn't talked a lot about establishing the partnerships with community colleges, but Nicole does a phenomenal job of that. And, and Chris, I know you brought this up a few times prior to today. And so some of that work and the groundwork of doing that to make things seamless really lies in Nicole's shop. And so that's one of the things that we really want to talk about at upcoming conferences, both the integration, but also how you lay the groundwork before you can even worry about getting the student integrated into your campus.
Oh, great. Well, Nicole, going back to Nicole, I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you were working on a program to pair incoming transfer students with transfer students who are being successful in your campus. Can you give us a little update on where that is and how that program's going?
Yes, we should be inviting our first class of transfer honor students in this fall semester, so I'm really excited about that. From there, we'll be establishing our officers and hopefully starting to build those mentoring relationships and hoping to integrate those students into the different recruiting efforts that we make with other institutions in the area as well.
That's a fantastic idea. I think when I transferred on a large school, especially having been at a smaller institution, I was lost the first half the semester. I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't find my way around the library. And we have a great orientation program, so I'm not trying to blame Georgia Southern's orientation, but it was just a completely different world. And I think that's a wonderful program to help welcome some students, because so often people transfer to a slightly larger institution when they have finished their first 2 years. So we're right at the 30-minute mark. Are there any closing comments you'd like to make to wrap us up and send us out?
I guess if I could say any last thing, it would be that the other part of this that we didn't talk to today was that we have faculty who understand who those students are as well. And it's part of our role to make sure that faculty are aware that, hey, these students are here, they're going to be in your classrooms, they're going to be having different experiences. And although I can't tell a chemist how to teach stoichiometry per se, I can definitely be in a position to tell the professors and the faculty about who the students are and what they bring with them, so that they're aware that as they're executing and teaching in the classroom, that this student type is here and it may have some impact on your discussion. And I think Nicole does a great job of that as well. She spends time with our academic affairs office and really brings a lot of attention to the students who are coming in.
Nicole, any closing comments as you move forward with your awesome program and awesome mentorship there?
No, just thank you for having us today. I appreciate it.
All right, well, the next Student Affairs Live will be on May 14th with Heather Shea Gasser as she discusses, so you attended a Student Affairs conference, now what? Which will be great, so check that out on May 14th. I want to thank both of you again for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully we'll have you again on very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.